Namaskar and good evening. Excellencies, President of the Chamber, my colleague committee members, viewers from overseas, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you. Today, once again, I'm your host, Sunanda Rajendran, came with an excellent subject, a very useful and important topic on strategies to succeed in Africa. All these days, we were talking about the available opportunity in the respective African countries, how to explore them, how one should start the business, which country they should start. And while doing that, many of you must have gone ahead, achieved a milestone, whereas some of you are still battling for want of funds, especially the private sector and the MSME sector. Many a time I get the offer that people are signing the contract, they are ready to enter into a JV regarding the project, may it be agriculture, may it be food processing, may it be cultivation, may it be mining, may it be skill development, giving value addition and technology transfer. We have focused on some selected sectors which are predominantly having excellent opportunity in almost all the African countries, and they are agriculture, their solar energy, IT and ICT, education, dairy development, pharma and healthcare, skill development training, turnkey solution companies, infrastructure and constructions. There are plenty of opportunities where the African side is trying to be partner with India. They have the ground realities, they have arable land, 60% of the arable land is there, but they are looking for high-end technology. Along with that, they are also battling for funding and expecting the Indian counterpart to come with technology and investment. Now, when the projects are bigger, more than 65 million or so, there are multinational companies, there are consortium where people are managing. But especially the public-private partnership for small, medium entrepreneur, where they're looking for $1 million to $50 million, are facing a lot of problems. Due to lack of guidance, both the party failed to execute the deal, resulting which the entire exercise goes in vain. According to me, I feel that we have still not taken Africa very seriously. Although government of India is aiming that India should reach on third or fourth position, we are still on the fifth position. We are far away from our target. Our target is $100 million, $100 billion trade, and we have just crossed $70 million. So we are far away from our target, and we feel, and I urge to people that now at least we have to start taking Africa seriously. We have to form a cluster, we have to form a consortium, and we should start evaluation, self-evaluation about our approach, whether it is a right approach or no. We have the government from both the sectors sides to help us. The diplomats are there. There are experts who are ready to be with us. So if we can take all those guidelines and we can work the way we wanted Africa to work with India, and the partnership will go a long way. Sometimes it is my observation that half the people are having knowledge about Africa. Some people are getting knowledge shared from some people, and they are going on those norms and without consulting the expert or taking expert opinion, and they burn their hands. And the moment they burn their hand, they don't evaluate that where what went wrong, but they start blaming Africa, they start blaming the system, and there are so many other problems and criticism. I would just say that when UK, USA, French, China, all are doing the business, why not India? Africa remains the same, challenges remain the same, potential opportunity remains the same. When these four giants can do business, why not India? So my appeal to my Indian business community that let's do self-evaluation, work out properly, and find out a proper solution, and look at Africa in a very, very serious manner, and we can achieve our target. As we all know that the region's economy is mostly agrarian, the farmers are unable to move up the value chain without electricity for processing, preserving produce. Today also, 70 million people are lacking for proper infrastructure, proper support. And there is an urgent infrastructure challenge. There are no good roads, no good connectivity. So far as Nigeria is concerned, for example, to invest between 30 billion to 40 billion in infrastructure. Lagos-based CHD estimates that national infrastructure budget has never surpassed $2 billion. The country's problems are made worse by the rapid growth of population, which is expected to jump from its current level of 186 million to 400 million by 2050. Now, Africa 50, when we talk about an infrastructure investment platform, which is backed by African Development Bank, estimates overall infrastructure funding needs in Africa, which amounts to $1.2 trillion between the period 2017 to 2025, or about $150 billion per year. It puts the funding gap between $30 billion to $40 billion a year, and about 158 financing deals for infrastructure or industrial project valued at $59 billion, or just 5% of the total needed, according to the new Partnership for Africa's Development and Economic Development Program of the Africa Union. When we are talking about the opportunity, the risk and challenges are there. There is a currency risk, like people are doing project in dollars, getting the income in their local currency. There is a mismatch. There are institutional investors. These are big issues. There are institutional investors. Many experts see that African institutional money as a large untapped resources that can drive infrastructure project. Then there is private initiatives. Private local institutions or investors are seen an important source of private financing in other African countries. When we are thinking in terms of private initiatives, there are small players who are playing small role in meeting the region infrastructure financing needs. There is an infrastructure consortium for Africa, where the region's total infrastructure funding amount to $62.5 billion. Now, for example, African national government made up around 42% of the total. The ICA members' contribution was 29.8%. The Arab Coordination Group is 8.8%. From China, it was 10.3%. Other multilateral organization, it was 5%. And the private sector investment was only 4.1%. So many national government puts a lot of emphasis on big projects, such as the proposed $80 billion grant in a dam in Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm sharing these inputs to the members for their benefits, that don't think that we Indians are going slow. It means the growth of Africa comes to a standstill. The growth is going on. The investors are investing. Only we Indians are going very, very slow. So we need to do, there is government support for doing this project, line of credit given by Exim Bank to the tune of $110 million to various projects in Africa. But it is not always applicable for small, medium projects that they will get finances from this big institution. So while speaking to the head of KIC Advisory Services, Mauritius, some couple of months before, we were discussing and we were talking about how to protect the interest of the small scale industry or MSME or the people who are planning to enter into Africa. And other than government priority project, if people wanted to do some projects execute in Africa, what synergies can be done? And that is why we have come out with this initiative to have this webinar today, so that we can understand from these experts who are working in Africa, knows Africa well, and they can share their knowledge and expertise how we have to do. So this is the first stage, and the second step will be after that, whatever projects are there, you can send us the summary, the dossier, and we will start working on those one by one, doability, eligibility, looking at that, and which are yielding good profit, which are doable, which are risky. All those things can be coming at a later stage. Now, I would like to introduce you our first speaker today. Is Mr. Afsar A.A. Ibrahim. He is an FCACF. He is the founding partner of KIC Advisory Services. He has over a quarter century of experience in corporate restructuring, litigation support, mergers and acquisition, strategy and financial consulting, fundraising to clients across a wide spectrum of industries, both locally and internationally. Afsar previously served as Deputy Group Managing Partner of the largest professional services firm in Sub-Saharan Africa, BDO in Mauritius, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Madagascar, and Seychelles. Having been part of the network, he completed the BDO Global Partners Leadership Program in 2016. Prior to his tenure at BDO, he served as Manager Corporate and Investment Banking in HSBC Mauritius. During this period, he was trained in Hong Kong and Singapore by HSBC in corporate lending analysis and applied credit lending. He also occupied the post of Group Finance Manager at British American Investment Group, BAI. Afsar is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountant in England and Wales, prize winner in professional exam PE1, and was granted the corporate finance qualification from ICAEW in December 2006, obtaining training in operational and financial consulting with Arthur Andersen at St. Charles, USA, and in London, and has attended the Harvard Business School program on managing professional services firm in 2012. In addition to his professional qualification, he was a founding member of Mauritius Africa Business Club. And as I mentioned that the Chamber proposes to join hand with Click Advisory Services to provide the services for arranging finances for the projects to be executed between the members of the Chamber and the fellow African counterparts. So with this word, I extend the invitation to Mr. Afsar Ibrahim to share his ideas and expertise. Welcome, sir. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be on the platform which Mrs. Sunanda has provided us, and would like to share with you our experience on working in Africa and how Indian corporates can benefit from our presence on the ground. What we have seen lately is that there's been a lot of interest, lots of investments, but the success stories are few and far between. And one of the reasons, in my humble opinion, has been there's been no proper strategy of going into Africa. There's been mainly opportunistic investments, but what we are looking at now is more to go into a more professional approach in getting a strategy done. And Mrs. Sunanda has provided all the nice introduction, and I would like now to just deep dive into my presentation. Since you have done such a wonderful introduction, ma'am, I think I'll skip and just go into why Africa. One of the mistakes people make is, and I see that in a lot of specialized journals, even business newspapers, they talk about India and Africa. I think that's a big mistake. Africa is not one country. We're looking at Africa has 54 countries, 54 markets, 54 different cultures, 54 different legal framework, and 54 fiscal regime. So you cannot compare one country with a continent. And that's one of the mistakes people make. And the other point that we need to take cognizance of, what works in Kenya is not going to work in Tanzania, although they are neighbors, let alone the west coast of Africa. South Africa is very different to Nigeria. And if you look at the Northern Africa, the sort of Arab countries, it's even more complex and complicated. Currently, Africa is attracting investments because it is providing higher return than any other markets. The areas where people are looking at are anything to do with technology, banking, telecommunication, agribusiness, energy sector. And what we should not lose sight of is the growing working class population. And that's a huge consumer market that nobody can ignore. Over the years, there was a lot of cliche on Africa, the doomed continent and various other negative press. Things have improved a lot lately. Trade barriers have come down, taxes have come down, regulatory framework have become better. Even the legal system has improved quite a lot, which makes Africa an interesting place to be. However, you need an Africa strategy. You can't just go into Africa in an opportunistic manner. You need to target the countries you want to go into. You need to see where does it make business sense for you to carry out your trade. You need to analyze the country risks. There are countries in Africa which are failed state. There are others who are at war, others coming from war. Others have got strong government dominance. Others are business friendly. So you need to analyze where you want to pitch yourself, which country you want to do business. It's not only about the ease of doing business, it's also about the cost of doing business and also what the market size. For example, if you go into Kenya, it's not only about one market, but you can move into the whole of what you call the East African community, which includes Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia. So you can get you get 5 markets by being positioning in one market. These are issues that you need to take into account. And then who are your competitors on the ground? Do you have competitors? Are you looking at servicing the local market, or are you looking at Africa, at the target country to go in an export market? So there are various work that needs to be done upfront. The other important point is the reason why a company will go from India into Africa is because you have been successful in India. You have derived certain competitive advantage, which makes you successful. But right now you want a geographical diversification. But what you need to be careful is that competitive advantage that you have in India will not translate automatically into a comparative advantage in Africa. So you have to think very carefully about your preferred strategy. What you do that you can replicate what can you export, because after we and assess your own strength so that you can be able to. Sorry, are you hearing me? Or I've just got a flash that the internet is.
Yeah, there was a problem. We just miss you 1 or 2 sentences.
Okay, let me just try. You got to assess what's your strength in India, what part of your business that can be replicable, what can be export, and which one will be compatible based on your own analysis of the target country you are going into. There are various models you can look at. You can start into the target country as a startup. You can go in through acquisition. But more importantly, you have to go into Africa in partnership with local players. Going into the African market all alone will make it very, very difficult. We need that local knowledge, and you need somebody to hold your hands inside the country. You have to look at your investment as being very long-term and that it is there for growth of the existing business. In the whole of where you have a dominant private sector in many countries, currently they are family businesses and they are having the 3rd generation syndrome. Some are willing to exit, others need capital, others need succession planning. And this creates the opportunity for a good Indian corporate to make strategic alliances. You have to look at the local partners, and my friend Atik, who will talk after me, can tell you how they can provide due diligence on the partners and gives you the comfort that you can go into an alliance, at least with shared values. Some companies are going into Africa by providing technical assistance, especially in the manufacturing sector. Once the confidence level grows, then they start aligning with financial interests. But if you are looking to have a clear strategy, don't hesitate to use intermediaries. By intermediaries, I mean transaction advisor like Kick Advisory Services law firms like Africa Legal Network, accounting firms, any of the big fours or BDOs, and finally bankers. Some of the Indian banks are present in Africa. There are also a lot of international banks where you could probably enjoy a certain relationship where they will be able to guide you. You look at doing business in Africa, I'll share with you some of the aspects to consider. Like I said earlier, you're going for a geographical diversification. So try to look at one country, one approach. It's not because you're going to 5 countries, the same approach will work. You're in Africa for the long run. But very importantly, you need to understand the local context. And I will continue to stress on one very important point. You need a local partner, which I call it a local hero, because without his support, you may not get success that you want in the time you want to get it. It's very important that you also have a clear strategy on the HR in developing local talent. Although there is a big talent pool in Africa, it's not like in India. You need to nurture those talents and grow, because if you lose people and you have a high turnover of employment, it might become difficult for your business to be sustainable, because the level of disruption can be too high. And unlike India, the pool is not that big. It's also very important that you understand local sensitivities. Just for example, you can't translate an advertising billboard from Hindi into Swahili and think it's going to work. We just have to be very careful about these sensitivities, and then you need to adapt. That's the importance of having your local hero and your local partner on the ground. Some other practical tips is that business culture in Africa is very similar to India. People buy from people, is driven by relationship, and that is a key part of it. So you need to invest in building relationship, and this is what will lead to success on the ground. African consumers have different needs. Today, in most parts of Africa, having access to internet and mobile is considered to be part of the basic needs. But as I said, there is a lot of regional grouping happening, like the South Africa Development Community, the Common Market for East and Southern Africa, the ECOWAS on the West Coast. So when you look at Africa, when you're developing your strategy, take into account also that there is a possibility of a regional reach. There are some large markets like Nigeria, South Africa, and Ethiopia. If you're thinking about FMCG, these are the markets to go for. You look at Rwanda is emerging as a financial hub. It's a country which is scoring very highly on governance, on the rule of law. And strategic partners, if you look at Kenya, there is a vibrant private sector, which makes a strategic alliance a lot more feasible, a lot more easy. And on my last slide, I'll just share with you a methodology which we commonly use when you go into the target market, what you need to look at, how big is the market, can it really grow, which product and service segments you want to invest in, and your route to market. That's an important one. Distribution, logistic is a key channel to market. And it's not only about making your produce, but also getting that route to market right. The next one is, what are the drivers to your market developments? Is it local distributors? Is it the retailers? You need to move a lot more quickly on those. And like I said, Africa brings you a huge opportunity, but it's also a dangerous opportunity. And it's very important that we stay focused and use services of intermediaries to be able to craft the right strategy for you. And I will end here, and I will take your question after Atik has made his presentation on the legal framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Afsar, for the excellent presentation. I would request Mr. Atik first to give his presentation. Meanwhile, in the chat box, if the questions are coming, we will take that. So I'll now introduce Mr. Atik Anjarwala, who is a senior partner at ALN Kenya, Anjarwala and Khanna since 1993. He is also the managing partner at the firm's Dubai office, ALN UAE. Anjarwala, Collins, and Haider Mota since 2010. With over 36 years active experience, Atik's practice principally focuses on merger, acquisition, assisting FDI in the African market, general corporate advisory, and hospitality project. He has acted for a number of substantial Indian and European clients, entering several African markets and in the GCC. Atik is a solicitor of the Senior Court of England and Wales, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and a licensed legal practitioner in Dubai, UAE. He previously worked with Slaughter and May in London. Atik was also one of the founders of ALN, which is africalegalnetwork.com, and he pioneered the opening of the ALN office in Tanzania and UAE. Atik is well-seasoned advisor, writer, and recognized regional speaker, having conducted a significant number of talks as well as interview around the area of expertise. His excellence in both Africa and UAE is recognized by various national legal guides, including Chambers Global Legal 500, IFLR 1000, PLC Which Lawyer, and Best Lawyer, and has been nominated as a leading lawyer in several practice areas. So I welcome you, Atik, and the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sundana. I'm feeling embarrassed now with that very glowing introduction. Thank you. Very kind of you. So a pleasure to be on this webinar, and thank you to Afzar. Thank you to you and the organizers as well for inviting me. So let me get straight into it. Afzar has made a very critical point right at the beginning, and I just thought you can see it pictorially, that Africa is not one country. It's as he said, 54 countries, and really this is such a crucial point, because even for a number of our Indian clients that we've represented have made this error. And I think one of the biggest Indian investments in Africa currently has been the Bharti Airtel, and we did some legal work for them when they made the acquisition of the Africa businesses of Airtel. And I think this was probably one of their weaknesses as well, thinking that what applies across India, for example, as one policy would apply equally across Africa. And the realization has come a bit late, I guess, that will simply not work. So it really is a very critical point, and many of the points that Afzar pointed out in terms of how you treat the continent become very critical. So the next slide will give a bit more detail, and it's just really covering the same issues as has been stated. The legal jurisprudence, therefore the legal setup in the continent varies a lot, and as you know, with India, we had one ruler, right? It was the Brits. But Africa has been divided among the Belgians, the Brits, the Italians, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the result is that there's a big mix of legal systems, big mix therefore of even cultures, big mix of language. If you're doing an M&A deal across the continent, and we've acted for some Indian groups that have bought assets across various jurisdictions, you could be dealing with Portuguese, Arabic, English, French, quite easily on one deal. So you can understand that the complications with that come with that. Remember, there's some very interesting regional blocks as well. So we have COMESA, ECOWAS, SADC, and East African Community. These are basically free trade zones which crisscross. And some countries are member of COMESA and EAC, some are not members of others. But the upshot of that is that in terms of doing business, especially if you are setting up a manufacturing plant, for example, in one of these countries, then you could rely on one of the trade treaties to actually help you in terms of moving goods across other members. Some of you might have heard in the press that Africa is moving towards one global trading bloc. All the countries have now signed up to this. We actually think we've been following this quite closely, but we think that there is enough political goodwill to actually make this a reality, which of course would be a game changer if if essentially Africa ended up like the EU. But we feel that within the next 3 to 5 years, that will slowly become a reality. So plenty of time to plan as far as that is concerned. In terms of macro issues as well, these continents remain relatively challenging, but as Afzar has pointed out earlier, by and large, we are seeing the movement towards improvement in court systems, much more recognition of property rights. Red tape definitely has improved. Of course, there are some countries better than others, with Mauritius being the leader in terms of organization. But it's all very positive. If you looked at the countries that rank really low in like the World Bank benchmarking of ease of doing business, many of the African countries are now moving up to higher levels. And importantly, the last point I made is that in the 70s and the 80s, there was a lot of concern about, well, if I buy a piece of land and I build my factory, will my property rights be recognized and will they be enforceable? And the good news overall, I think, is that they will. And so that gives much more confidence to investors to make long-term hard investments. So, being a lawyer, I'm often challenged by clients on structuring. So what are the things that you need to keep in mind if you're structuring an African investment? Of course, you will be using people like Afzar to do your strategy, to do the thinking around, the more sort of hard business areas. And then hopefully you turn to lawyers and tax advisors to help you on structuring. As you may be aware, like Mauritius has a very good double tax treaty with India. So Mauritius has been very aggressive in building out its treaty network with a number of African countries, and quite successfully. Other countries are also catching up. So the UAE, where I'm based as well, is now pushing very hard to build its treaty network. And that means that, of course, investments can be in advance planned in such a way that the advantages can be taken of the double tax treaty network, together, of course, with BITs. So, so that hopefully you can take advantage of them to ensure that there is a less chance of sequestration of your assets under the investment treaties that many African countries have signed. And we pointed out there that Mauritius, for example, has 16 DTAs and BITs. The Netherlands has 8. The UAE, 9. Sorry, and the UAE has 8 DTAs. But these are growing. Of course, there is some pushback now, just generally with tax transparency on the use of DTAs. But as they still become important elements in any structuring. Again, what we have found by and large is that many foreign clients have an assumption that legally and from a fiscal perspective, Africa might not be that advanced. So I think that's something that you need to keep in mind very quickly. That it's actually to the contrary. Most countries have fairly sophisticated, tax laws, for example. And a lot of you who are doing business, especially doing business internationally, some of the points that I've raised on this slide, I'm sure will resonate with you. So, thin capitalization, debt to equity ratios coming in, you have to sit with people like Afzar and work out in terms of thin cap, what are your debt to equity ratios you need to get correct so that you can maximize your interest costs on your P&L. Transfer pricing has become a very big issue on the continent now. Most tax authorities are very alert to this, and therefore, if you're using India or the Indian companies using the UAE as a base from which to bring its investments in, then transfer pricing and having a solid transfer pricing policy becomes very critical. Management and control, again, is becoming quite a hot topic. So in light of the DTAs, structuring the DTA, structuring your offshore companies and use of DTAs, very, very critical, because again, local tax authorities are now looking into management and control issues. Is the foreign holding company managed and controlled from Kenya or West Africa or wherever? And of course, if they can prove that, then all the offshore income becomes locally taxed income. So again, working with professional advisors to make sure that your thin cap thinking, your transfer pricer thinking, your management control thinking is done well in advance, so there are no surprises later on. I've meant royalties and IPs. Again, clearly, if you're doing multi-jurisdictional investments, then use of royalties in terms of intellectual property. Where do you register intellectual property? Do you do it offshore? Do you do it onshore? And how do you extract income, royalty income? Again, there's a mixture of obviously transfer pricing issues and other tax issues. But again, my overall point is, don't assume what works in India or what works in Europe, where if the Indian companies made investments there, would work in Africa. And again, as Afzal and I have said earlier, every country will have different rules. So it's a country by country approach. Again, some of the key points to keep in mind. What we have found as well is that we have fairly sophisticated permanent establishment rules. So we often find that businesses will sort of start to operate on a light basis in country. And our permanent establishment rules are probably very similar to what you have in India. And a lot of clients get tripped up on this because suddenly, you have a one-man, two-man show working from a hotel, and suddenly you find out that you've established a permanent establishment, which makes all your income generated from that permanent establishment locally taxed. So be very careful how you enter. Obviously, immigration issues as well become very relevant in that regard. I've touched about the overall sophisticated tax regimes. Please keep that in mind. A couple of other points I think that are very important is, foreign exchange controls. By and large, the continent is moving towards loosening foreign exchange controls. But if you take Kenya as a very good example, then there are pretty much no foreign exchange controls. Money can come in, can come out pretty freely. Except for a few regulated industries, you can have foreign ownership 100%, foreign board of directors 100%. But that does differ from country to country. So again, how your monies flow in and how you intend to take them out can become quite challenging. Ethiopia, for example, currently, which is also a favored hotspot for investment, they have huge issues with FX. So, planning on when you can extract and how quickly you want to extract your profit needs to be thought through. Local and foreign content requirements, I've touched upon this briefly. Again, just check which industry you're in. Are there any foreign or local content requirements you need to follow, in terms of having a local partner? The point was made earlier by Afzal quite rightly that, there may be a lot of value in having a local partner who can help you navigate the local market in a way that obviously as a foreign party you would find much more difficult. Conduct proper market research, absolutely. There can be a lack of transparency overall. Don't believe what you read in the website immediately. And some of our registries where documents are kept may not be that organized. So, you need to dig deep to get to the bottom of who your JV partner might be, for example. I've said environmental issues and antitrust issues because again, a lot of people come into the continent thinking that some of these critical laws might not exist, but they do. We have very aggressive environmental authorities. And therefore, for example, if you are planning a manufacturing plant or some large construction, then your environmental issues become very critical. In terms of antitrust, again, we have very sophisticated laws across most countries, including laws that will trigger a antitrust or a monopolies disclosure, even if a sale is made offshore. So, I mean, I remember when Airtel bought, essentially the entire deal was done offshore, and that has triggered, for example, a lot of thinking around both tax and antitrust. That can you simply use an offshore company which owns the African assets, move the shares in the offshore company, and change ownership. So you will find now in most countries, simply exchanging shares offshore might trigger both local taxes and also antitrust issues. And the last point, again, Afzal has touched on, and I won't repeat that, do you go alone or do you go with a local group? By and large, our view would be that, at least in your first investment, think of using a local group who can help you navigate local issues. Some of the key risk factors that we keep on seeing from time to time, it's difficult to rank these really. And again, with 55 countries, 54 countries, it's very difficult to give a general outlay, but keep them in mind. The big elephant in the room, the C issue, continues to be a problem. Having said that, we as a substantial law firm, we don't indulge in this, and we find that we manage to close all our transactions and get approvals, etc., without anything below the table. But of course, we're all realistic, and we know that these things happen. But it can clearly be a challenge, or it can be a frustration. Okay? I've talked about restrictive policies and regulatory frameworks. What I mean by this really is the things I just touched upon: FX, environmental, antitrust. Think about this. Weak institutions, yes, but improving. Court systems, regulators, etc. Political instability, I think, what the position was in the 70s and 80s when you'd open the newspaper and you'd see that some African countries had a coup. I don't think you see that at all these days, or very rarely. And I think that's, again, moving in the right direction. But of course, this, I don't underestimate that people do take this issue into account. But again, I think by and large, not a big issue as it was before. Okay? Weak security, again, there's a feeling that these countries are unsecure and unsafe. Again, I would say that by and large, that it's a misconception. Of course, there are areas there can be flashpoints, but certainly the foreign clients that we have in the East African countries where I'm based, once they come in country, they realize it's not that big a deal. And then, is it really that high risk? So I think I would venture to say, and I'm sure Afzal will agree with me, that the risks are not dissimilar to other emerging markets. But again, country by country. So, country A in Africa definitely may be more risky than country B. But in terms of the trajectory overall, moving in the right direction. So I just thought I'd just set out some key takeaways before I'm almost coming to an end, because I know we have limited time. But again, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Please that's important, then get your hands dirty. I like to say you cannot work in Africa by remote control. You have to go and spend time on the floor there, understand what's happening in each country, get to know people. Transparency can be an issue. As I've said, don't just rely on what's on a website of your potential partner. Talk to people on the ground. Are they paying their debts at all? Are they paying them in 60 days, 90 days, 100 days, 180 days, etc.? You get a good sense of where they stand. Again, be legally compliant at the outset. Again, what we find with a lot of foreign players is that there's this feeling that it'll be okay. Yeah. Tax departments are very sophisticated, regulators are very sophisticated, and if you're not legally compliant, they can come and bite you. Understand the cultural environment, absolutely critical, as I've discussed, language, different legal systems. If you don't understand that, you simply will find it very hard to succeed. And then this is a plug for Afzal and me. Obviously, think of using good professionals who can hold your hand and guide you locally. I think I'll stop there. I just put a couple of slides just so that you have some background about us. We have an office in Dubai, and then we have 15 offices across Africa, and we all work in a very coordinated fashion. And that's just us at a glance in terms of the countries in which we're in. I think I have not abused my time slot, so let me end there and hand over the mic to Sundana.
Thank you, Atik sir, for the wonderful presentation. Uh, by and large, we understood how Africa is functioning. And I have, of course, put some questions to Afsar. And that is on behalf of the members, what our members are doing so far as hand-holding support is concerned. We work, since we are in Focused Africa Chamber, so we try, work with this mission, work with our Indian mission there, work with local people there. We have our representative, but still many a time, people are battling. We have recently done B2B meeting with Namibia. We are now going to soon have meeting with Nigerian counterpart, where about 150 people are there. So I have put some question to Afsar about that. How is your good office can help us? Like, see, we have 10,000 members. Out of that, there are some multinational companies, there are some MSME, there are some small and medium enterprises, people working on ground root, people working on the medium case. We are also working on the project which are signed, half signed, executed, and people have gone. So replacement of that party and bringing another party. So how good your both the offices, you said both of you have various offices in Africa. What synergy can be worked out between your two offices and the chamber?
Well, if I can go first on this one, it depends on what's the requirements of your clients. Let's say you got an investor willing to go and invest in a technology and they are looking for a partner in East Africa. First, we need to find out where they want. They need to do that groundwork first, which country they want to go into. Once they have looked at the regulatory framework, they have looked at the market, they have decided that this is a country they want to go into. First, we can help them in that evaluation process. Like I said earlier, I mean, the whole subject of our discussion today is to have an Africa strategy. And as opposed to an opportunistic approach where people see a tender in the newspaper and say, I'm going to submit this tender. If I win, I win. We're not looking at that. We're saying is you need to have that Africa strategy. Once that strategy has been established, then it's like a puzzle. Everything will fit into place. Then we can find the right partner, get the right financing, get the right structure in place. And then we go from there. But the work that needs to be done initially is that strategy. Where you want to go in Africa, which industry you're going into, what's the market like? These are the studies that needs to be done upfront. Once all this is cleared, then you can move into the right, with the right mindset, with the right professionals, into the execution mode. Problem is people have been executing transaction without a strategy. And then when it goes bad, then they said Africa is not a good place to invest. But, you have done your homework well. And the investments in getting that strategy right is what we are advocating today.
My second question, I was talking about that, for example, a company from India has already identified a partner in Namibia for dairy development. Government of Namibia has also endorsed that project. They have come to an understanding where they're going to sign an MOU. But now both the parties, the JV is battling for funds. Indian company is expert in technology, but is unable to raise that much fund as investor. How would your how your good office will help us in resolving this issue? Would you be able to assist us in those kind of an issue? Raising private investors or raising funds locally?
You see, it depends on the nature of the investments. Is it something that they are going into Namibia to serve the Namibian market, or is it something that you're going to be based in Namibia and to export to the rest of the world or to the rest of Africa? Is there a foreign currency component into play? If there is a foreign currency component, what's the situation in Nigeria? Are foreign currency readily available? Once we get over this, then it's a question of the Indian party. How strong is his balance sheet? Is he investing in Namibia directly from India, or like Atik has explained, or are you putting a structure in place in Mauritius for it or anywhere else? And based on that structure, the ability to raise the funding will come. And then the next challenge is, where will the fund provider get adequate security? Will it be on the assets of Namibia, or will it be on the assets based in India? And finally, your project, is it supported by sustainable cash flow? And obviously, a finance provider will ensure that there is adequate capitalization and that people will share the risk, so that the risk is not only in the funds provider. If the capital structure is done correctly, the funds will come. Now, you're talking about a Namibian government signing an MOU. I assume that it's a government-backed project. So if it's a government-backed project, chances are you could get a sovereign guarantee from Namibia. And if this is available, then the financing becomes a lot easier. But the two questions I have for your client is, before signing the MOU, have they got people with the right competencies to guide them before signing the MOU? Right? Are they using somebody like Atik to review that MOU before they sign? Secondly, have they done a customer due diligence on the other party they are getting involved into? I mean, these are two critical points, because once you sign these binding documents, you're able to get back into reverse gear. These are actions that needs to be taken in evaluating the due diligence of the customer. We are all very familiar with doing a financial due diligence or a legal due diligence, but we don't do enough due diligence on the people we are dealing with. And secondly, have we done a political analysis of the country we are going into?
So now, if I can just raise another quick issue based on what Afzal has just said, I 100% agree with him, but I'll give you an example. We recently had a client that is was looking into a large manufacturing investment in Madagascar. And they came to us and they said, oh, we've got something promised that the president of Madagascar is willing to sign an MOU for us, and can you do the legal work? And the first thing we said to them is that do you know that Madagascar has got very broad and powerful procurement laws, which actually don't allow the president to even sign something like this, So I think the point is very critical, because sometimes you might get carried away by not realizing that the president actually, even if your local partner says I can do this, and actually you'll be taken for a ride, okay? Because under the procurement laws of that country, the president can't do what he says that he thinks he can do for you. So I'm giving you a very hard example of how you need to be very cautious and ensure that you have people who can hold your hand and that you're not being taken for a ride.
And the other point, I think, is I'm not sure the president has said he's signing the MOU. Somebody is claiming the president is going to sign the MOU.
This is a common practice in Africa. Even sometime, country like Cameroon, the importer's bank was charging the interest which the importer is supposed to pay from the exporter, and it has come to the tune of $5,000 to $6,000. And luckily, the matter came to me. We asked the Indian embassy there in Cameroon to intervene, and we realized it and all. But these are small, minor matter. My main concern is that Government of India wants Indian companies to do business with Africa and to promote, because Africa is an important partner for us. But as both of you have correctly said, that the kind of due diligence and all, nothing we are doing it. This is only multinational companies who are doing big projects, only they do. When we are thinking in terms of, like, we meet people on one of the mega annual event, whether we meet the presidential delegation, people are coming, or ministerial delegation, business people are coming. There is a matchmaking between an Indian side and African side, and they take the momentum there. And before inviting them, there are the partners, Chamber of Commerce there are Indian Embassy's office, and their diplomats here, and that is how the known contacts, their KYCs with us. Many a time our people sign contract, they go ahead, but again, what happened is the African side also is not that experienced, they don't understand the ethics. So do you have any eligibility criteria that, okay, for small, this is the barrier, up to this level we can see the present? Because you mean to say every small and medium company should come and take a legal opinion or do due diligence and everything? Do you mean to say that, or how do we do that?
Yeah, let me start, and then maybe Afzal can take the floor after me. I think the answer, look, if you're doing some basically trading arrangement, yeah, it's a 90-day revolving your money in 90 days. Of course, you don't, I mean, you probably need to do some due diligence on your buyer. You're supplying rice, or you're supplying spices or whatever. And then it's more a banking transaction to make sure that you have a confirmed LC, so on and so forth. Yeah. Of course, you want to make sure that your basic buyer is somebody of good standing, etc. But the moment you're taking a more long-term approach and you're going to be placing capital in a particular country, then clearly you need to get this right. And of course, we all know that entering any, look, the same Indian company, if it's entering into EU, would do the same thing, wouldn't it? So why wouldn't you do it in Africa? And that's the question I say to my Indian colleagues. And I think sometimes it's just because it is, it seemed to be, perhaps it's a light touch and we don't need to be that organized. Okay? And that's where, as Afzal has said, people have gone wrong. Because, every country will have its laws and its rules and its regulations, its ways of doing business. And you definitely have to spend some energy, some time, and some money if you want to succeed. Otherwise, it just won't work.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Afsar, would you like to say something on this?
Yeah, it's part of the cost of investments. I mean, if you're trading, you may have a different mindset, but if you're going to invest, you might as well get things right, because the cost of not doing it upfront is too high. If you don't get that investment done, then you put your money and then it's a big write-off after 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm. Because you see, country like Angola, country like Mozambique, country like Ghana, country like Nigeria, DR Congo, these are some of the countries which are huge. Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia, we have led several delegations. There is good potential. His Excellency, the Consul General here, Ethiopia, the ambassador in Delhi, they have put best of their efforts in arranging meeting with the ministers, with all those departments and everything. But again, Ethiopia is struggling with forex. Members are interested in doing business with Ethiopia, are putting up their projects, but forex mobility is not there. So it has come to a standstill. So how do we overcome, or how does your good office can help, especially in Ethiopia, in pharmaceutical project, in IT project? We are talking about setting up a pharmaceutical plant, putting up a hospital in Ethiopia. And third is the skill development center, where we are talking about 10 to 15 vocational training institute and 3 or 4 incubation centers. So how does Atiq, your office or your expertise, or Mr. Afsar can help us?
You see, Ma'am, if you are setting up in Ethiopia, is it being set up to serve the 100 million people in Ethiopia, or is it being set up for export?
It is for local people of Ethiopia. We want to set up for local people in Ethiopia, not for exports.
So if it's local people, then whether the country has got foreign exchange or not,
They don't.
it's not something that we can provide you. It's a fact. It's the treasurer. It's the central bank. Now, what I understand is for raw materials, it takes about 3 months to get the foreign exchange. And if it's capital expenditure, it takes about 6 months. Now, if this is the rule of doing business in Ethiopia, then you inbuild this in your cash flow. You can't go to Ethiopia and have the same working capital cycle like you have in Mumbai. You need to know that if you're going there, it takes you 3 months to get your foreign exchange. You build your production facilities and your cash flow in line with what's available. Because this is what it is. If you're going to apply your own model of what you have in your own country and try to replicate, it will not work because you have a queuing system in Ethiopia for about 3 months for your working capital. You inbuilt it in your production cycle, you inbuilt it in your working capital cycle.
And I mean, Ethiopia is a good example. I mean, we are quite busy there. We do a lot of work for private equity funds, etc. in Ethiopia, and Afzal is 100% correct. So first of all, you know, it is an old socialist country. Now it is trying to move itself from its socialist past to a more capitalistic type of structure. But there are also lots of restrictions on foreign ownership there. There are some businesses that are meant entirely for Ethiopians. So how do you structure around that? You can't actually get a license as a foreigner at all. Some will allow, very few allow for 100% foreign ownership, and some will allow for joint ownership. So that's a very important point to keep in mind, because if you just think you can go and start doing business, then you start spending money without getting your structuring correct, there will be issues. And then, as Afzal has quite rightly pointed out, we suspect the shortfall of FX will last another 2 to 3 years because of this mega dam project that Ethiopia is building, where it's sucking up all the foreign currency reserves. So if you have a long-term view in Ethiopia, you believe that market is sustainable for you, and we have a number of clients who are buying and selling businesses there. Then, as Afzal has said, in terms of your ability to withdraw dividend and interest income, shareholder loans, etc., you need to build that into your model, and then you shouldn't be disappointed. And of course, get to understand exactly with your local, with your local advisors as well, what is the queuing system for FX and so on and so forth. And that's the point we were making earlier, that unless you go to the country, spend a couple of weeks there to fully understand the lay of the land, you can't do it remote control.
That is correct. That is correct. See, now wastewater treatment is concerned, and disaster management is concerned, agriculture advisory consultancy services are concerned, where we can give them high-end technology to get the high yield. So there are government-driven projects and there are private sector-driven projects. Of course, we have companies like Jain Irrigation, Adani Group. We have some Godrej. They have already acquired certain projects, and where the chamber was instrumental. Since you have 15 offices based there, would you be in a position to share some details of these projects having in the hand of private sector, where we can work out some synergy, and we can arrange a JV between an Indian company and the concerned African company? Can we work out some synergies there, where your good office does is the due diligence? And because in Namibia, as I told you, that last 3 years, we are battling. We met the minister, His Excellency, the minister he came here in Vibrant Gujarat. The party concerned came. We have taken them to the plant. We discussed everything. The project was allotted without a sovereign guarantee because there was no sovereign guarantee balance. So now sovereign guarantee in Africa is next to impossible. So is there any possibility where this second layer of business community can be taken care of, or can be guided properly?
Yeah, so this is what we are doing with Afzal all the time, for example. Okay, so what would happen is you would together, for example, with Afzal would do the pitch. in terms of exactly what you're looking for. He's got a lot of connections. He's worked across the continent for many years, and we are obviously locally there. So, what we would do is, if my home country is Kenya, for example, so we're the biggest law firm there. So we by default have many connections with people in all different lines of business, and we very happily put you, or the client in touch with, a local partner. But clearly, once you approach that partner with full knowledge of on the ground of what exactly you're looking for, how you want to structure yourself, the chance of you cutting the deal will obviously be higher. Yeah? And where it's a government tender, and as Afzal has said, then think of linking up with somebody local, because their ability to understand exactly what the tender means and how it might close out will clearly be stronger than yours. Yeah, I'm not talking about big airports and whatever. Those are mega projects, but more mid-sized projects where and the point is that Western companies, Chinese companies are doing this regularly. So why shouldn't an Indian company be able to complete that? There's no difference really. But yeah. So as far as that's concerned.
No, we are having special emphasis for IT, ICT sector. We are talking about logistics sector because see, the quantum of consignment goes from Dubai port to Africa, about more than 2,000 tons capacity per day. So we wanted to look at that. We are looking at education. Like we are working in ECOWAS country, Burkina Faso, especially the Francophone countries where we are giving education through TAB. And the World Bank project, but funding took 2 years. The party concerned has education minister delegation. They went 4 to 5 times in Burkina. We have discussed so many things. It's a World Bank funded project. But we have got the work order also from the education department, but now it's more than 2 years. Similarly, we have security surveillance company, which is having a turnover, substantial good turnover, about 150 crore per annum in India. And they are doing excellent with the government of India here, and they are interested in doing in countries where there is a risk factor, like they can do in Mali, they can do in Burkina, they can do in Niger. So in those countries or anywhere in Africa, security, surveillance or defense is very important. And they are ready to, deliverables are concerned, performance guarantees concerned, everything is fine. So to that kind of a capacity company, how is your good office going to help?
Look, I mean, I think, I would again say that take a step back. Okay, look, for example, I mean, what I'm going to tell you is it's not privileged information. It's available. So we act for Gada World. So Gada World is the world's third largest security company. It's Canadian. We've made for them already 18 acquisitions across Africa, security companies. This is, I'm talking about the lower level security, but of course they're going higher level as well. Okay, they spent 6 months, 7 months, a lot of time and even money with us to understand all the markets they wanted to enter into. They did their survey work, etc., etc. And we've now acted for them on the M&A side as the lawyers and made substantial acquisitions for them. But I think, as I said, many countries, East Africa, South Africa, West Africa. So it's how you structure your game plan, okay? And as I said, there has to be some, because we understand that, India is not like China, right? Where the government is going to back you up with cash, okay? So yeah, so that's the big difference, okay? So essentially, it's a private sector investment, and to some degree, it's not dissimilar to any private sector. I mean, it would be like making an investment in Europe that you're making. There's no difference because these are generally free markets. So, all the things that you would do before making an investment in Europe, you would substantially do the same thing when making an investment in Africa. All the things, sort of the main topics that we have discussed. And if your project is basically viable, there's also local cash available. Long-term debt and even working capital lines. If you have a good project, we are all the DFIs are very active across Africa. IFC, Propaco, DEG, Actis, CDC, all the user people who are also investing in India, by the way. So, I think it's how it's packaged. What is your market entry? How organized are you? So on and so forth. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
I think the two examples given in Mrs. Sunanda's intervention, one is about the project in Namibia and the other one in Burkina Faso. Now, they are both projects which sort of kick-started following a ministerial visit, and then, so again, it's not projects that were thought from a strategy point of view. They were opportunistic that the Indian corporates have taken on board. And once you took over those opportunities, you are stuck because you're dealing with government bureaucrats who are facilitating it. I mean, you're bound to get into trouble because there's no service provider in between, now a transaction advisor, no a commercial lawyer that will push the boat out. You are stuck between civil servants who are pen pushers and a private operator in India who are used to a certain ease of doing business. So these two don't match, because I'm sure if you're doing business private sector to private sector, things would go a lot faster. I think because there's a lack of middlemen. When ministers come on delegation, everything looks nice. Everybody say they are going to support you, and once you're on the ground, you are very much on your own and there's nobody behind you. And then those who have taken part in the initial discussion have either been transferred or been promoted, and you are stuck with people you don't know. And it's always restarting the process all over again. Again, these two examples clearly showed that those who went into those projects did not have a strategy. Because if you had a strategy, maybe you wouldn't have gone into those projects.
Very correct. No, most of the communications and contacts are like that, as you have. I completely agree with that. So the best message what we can give to our members or any Indian company proposed to do business with Africa, that when you are identifying a person, take use of these expertise services, have an agency who can do the due diligence and all, and can act as a middleman, and we can take it forward. Now, my last question to you is regarding those companies which are ready to sell, where Indian companies can invest in and take over those companies, the merger companies. So do you have some medium-size range company that they want to sell it off, where Indians can invest it and take over that local company and start operation? So if you have those kind of information, I would request you to part with me so that we can circulate. There are a good couple of companies from the Chambers fraternity who would like to invest in and take over those companies, especially in interest in East Africa and the SADC country.
I think as far as that's concerned, I think Afzal would be your first point of contact, because he and other colleagues who are doing similar business to him, they are the people whom the underlying client will come to, right? I have a pharma business, or I have an agri business, or I have a FMCG business, and I'm looking to sell outright, or I want a JV partner, or I want to raise money, or whatever it is. And so they all have a pipeline, of buy and sell mandates. And I'm sure, we work very closely with Avzar, so sometimes he'll ring us up and say, listen, many East Africa who wants to buy or sell a business in a particular sector. And of course, we have our own clientele. But my advice on that would be, go to somebody like Avzar. So what's your line of business? If it's pharma, for example, pharma manufacturing, or if it's pharmaceutical, medical equipment manufacturing, then he can do the research, right? He contacts people like us in East Africa. He's got his else. They have they have an investment strategy they want, and then you start building up the profiles of potential people that you can talk to. Then we get the NDA done. like any process anywhere else in the world, yeah?
Yeah.
And then after that you have 10 people you identify, you think you're going to like 5, and then you start meeting and talking to them, and hopefully then you come close to closing with 1 or 2 of them.
Absolutely.
If I can add, I may sound like a broken record again, but you see, if I have a company today that I'm looking for a partner, I send it to you. I said, do you have anyone interested? Again, this is an opportunistic transaction. My advice to your corporates who are interested with Africa, they need to do a clear strategy paper where they want to be. Which country makes sense according to their business? If they are in pharma, are you looking at trading? Are you looking at manufacturing? Which country is offering the right opportunities? Are you looking at pharma to supply the local market, to export in the region? Are you looking at establishing a free port area and then you break the bulk and get the logistics? So you need all that strategy already in place. Then they will still, we have zoom in, we want to be in Kenya because there's a port of Mombasa, which is the best in the area. We can use it and blah, blah, blah. Can you find us a partner or a business to buy in Kenya? Then we'll find that partner that will fit into their model. Because if I bring you a business, I said, there's an opportunity. They said, okay, how much is it? $10 million, $5 million. Okay, we can take a risk. Let's take a punt. That's not a strategic investments. That's a gamble.
Correct.
And then gamble, you have what I call a strategy of hope that is going to work. But if you invest and do your homework up front, then you can say to myself or to Atik, we need manufacturing partner in pharma. Anybody who wants to sell their business or he wants to JV or wants a partial exit, we are ready. Then you have that strategic fit. Otherwise, you're back to opportunistic investments.
So, any tips or advisory, some advising you wanted to give to the Indian business community, especially the members of the chamber, do's and don't about Africa, something in short? Even if they are opportunistic, they're getting this kind of a proposal, what they have to do?
Do your homework, invest in professional and get your homework done. Look at the market, look at the political risk, look who you're dealing with in terms of counterparty, invest in professional that can secure your interests first and foremost, and then you dived in. You got to go down there, you got to get your hands dirty, like Atik said, and understand what you're getting yourself into. Don't assume anything. And Africa is 54 places. Africa is not India.
Correct.
And one final point, once you have already decided to invest, the next question is, do you have the right skill set in your management to move into those countries?
Correct.
I think you.
Any questions? I think you would like to add something.
No, I think there's nothing much more I can add, frankly, to what, Afzal has been very eloquent in identifying. I agree. It's not a one-fit-all strategy. You have to have a strategy. Yeah. And we've represented some of you very large, your top 20 businesses, all the big names in there, whether it's telecom, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's FMCG, and they come like any European company comes to us. They have a strategy, they have the management behind it, they've thought about their financing, but I know that not everybody's of that size. But the point is that I think in terms of how you approach it, it's at a smaller scale, but the approach has to sort of be the same, right? Because otherwise, as Afzal said, it's opportunistic. It's not based on of course, you could say that it's a gamble, okay? And fine. If you're willing to toss the coin and see which way it falls, is up to you. But by and large, all those investments we've seen have failed or have not been as successful as planned. I mean, we know a mid-sized Indian group that was doing property development in Nairobi, okay, and they came to us very late in the day. And when we saw the capital structure, we saw the type of JV agreement they had signed with the local partner. Frankly, where they had decided to invest in terms of locality in Nairobi as well, all were wrong. Okay, and as I said, that was doomed to fail. It was doomed from day one. Okay, now we are a bit surprised why people who are otherwise sophisticated in India could apply that sophistication in East Africa. I'm not sure what the thinking is behind that, but there's so, like if you were entering a market in a more sophisticated jurisdiction, if you want to put it that way, we have different problems in Africa, but the approach should be similar. Okay?
I just want to share a story with you, and it reflects a little bit the situation. A couple of years ago, I got a phone call from the CEO of one of India's leading companies. I was so happy to get that call because, the CEO is somebody who always makes the headlines, and, it's always you see on TV and stuff like this. So he called me, he said, I need to invest in Africa. I said, nice, I can, where you want to do. He just said, I need 500 acres of land. I said, to do what? He said, I don't need to do anything. I just need about 500 acres of land. I said, where? He said, it doesn't matter, anywhere. So, and I told him, will 500 acres of Sahel will do? I mean, it was just me being cheeky, saying about the Sahel will do. And he said, yes. Then I realized, something is wrong. I mean, what's the purpose? Basically, there was a private equity fund which is going to invest in the company in India. And one of the issues they have been having is this company is too India focused, and they have suggested, that they need to have some investments outside India. Like, if you get something in Africa, that will facilitate the evaluation process. So he thought the best bet is just buy some land in Africa and put on the balance sheet, and the PE fund would invest. So I told him, you should find a state agent, not me. But, that sort of approach will not work.
Yes, absolutely. I think you have answered all the questions what I have asked, and what we will do is I will send one note to my members and ask them what is the current status of the project which they have been sharing with me, and we will start with the reverse mechanism. We'll approach to your good office, seek your advice, and now what I propose that we can have a memorandum of understanding so that you become our official partner. Anybody who wants to do business with Africa, we first request them to avail your services and seek your assistance and guidance and take it forward there, because this is something is the primary position of going into arbitration. You can safeguard their interest. You and Mr. Atik, we can do that. So with this word, I will now request my colleague Sumit to propose a vote of thanks. Sumit, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Madam Sunanda Rajendra, the Secretary General of Indo-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Our distinguished speakers for today's webinar, Mr. Afsar Ibrahim, the Executive Director, KIC Advisory Services, and Mr. Atik Anjarwala, the Senior Partner, Africa Legal Network, Dubai, UAE. My colleague board members and all our viewers from India and overseas. I, Sumit Govind Sharma, on behalf of the Indo-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, would like to express our sincere thanks and gratitude to all the eminent speakers for the day. Respected speakers, the information and knowledge shared was wonderful. We are confident that this webinar has provided all of us with huge learnings about Africa and helps us to develop business opportunities for the African continent. We all understand that Africa is the future. The ties between India and Africa have always been very strong, and India has always been a very reliable partner to Africa. We would like to thank the teams of ISCCI and Group MRP for all their efforts and all the participants for giving us this amazing support. We have an announcement. On 21st October, we have a webinar scheduled, which is opportunities for business and investments in Rwanda at 3:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We have many eminent speakers from Rwanda. We also have B2B networking meetings lined up with 150 odd companies from Nigeria on 22nd and 23rd of October 2020. Details of the same has been shared by our team. So book your spots today, block your dates accordingly, and reap the benefits of the B2B meetings. Once again, thanking you all for being a wonderful audience as always. Stay safe, stay healthy. Signing off, Sumit Govind Sharma. Thank you.
So thank you very much,